Hey guys, welcome to my Atlas build guide. In this video I'm going to show you two different builds that I came up with for Atlas that make him pretty fun to play, and since he's a loot warframe, then also pretty useful to play. And honestly, it's starting to grow on me, and despite everybody thinking that Atlas is a really terrible warframe and you barely ever see him in play, I'm starting to question if there's a real reason for it. Now, the build I'm going to show you today uses 4 different augments, the first one at least, and it's this build. It uses resonator for 2 different things. For protection, because it passivates all enemies that get aggroed by the ball. And what it does is, with Conductor, you can give it a command to go to a specific place. And if you put it at a specific place that you want, it's going to group all enemies to that place. So I see a lot of people building grouping abilities like Larva or Korra's grouping ability or whatever on Atlas to group enemies to make it easier to use Petrify. I instead decided to use Resonator for its dual purpose in both preventing me from taking damage, which makes most missions way safer, and the fact that it concentrates enemies sets them up for petrifying a bunch of them at once, while also not ragdolling them like Larva does and some of the other grouping abilities do. So it kind of, I think this is the perfect ability. Sure, it doesn't group them all immediately, but it also has a long duration, meaning that it keeps grouping enemies after a single cast, and you don't have to recast the ability to keep grouping newer groups of enemies after you kill the previous one. So all of that is for Conductor and why it's here. The rest is going to go to Atlas's actual kit. And his entire build is built around Landslide. Sure, you're going to use Petrify, but you don't have to, actually. And in this build, you don't have to at all. And I actually recommend only using Petrify when you really need extra rubble to refresh your rubble count to above 1,400 for rubble heap. So, as you can see, there's 4 different augments. There's Conductor, there's Path of Statues, Rubble Heap, and of course, Orgaze. Orgaze is the one that is responsible for giving you extra loot. You start off with 34% drop chance, which eventually gets buffed by a bunch due to Malt Augmented. And Equilibrium is pretty much the only mod you need because you won't be casting a lot of abilities. Or in other words, you'll be casting mostly your Landslide, which in this build eventually is going to cost you nothing. Specifically because of Rubble Heap, where it says Landslide costs no energy and deals 2 times damage and travels faster. Now, the travels faster and damage is nice, but the free casting is what makes this whole build work. And Path of Statues is there so that you don't even have to cast Petrify to petrify enemies, because now Landslide, which is the only ability pretty much you're going to cast, also petrifies enemies for you so that you don't have to waste energy using Petrify. Therefore, you can get away with just an Equilibrium alone. And of course, Equilibrium, if you're going with this route to gain energy, you need a pet that has Synth Fiber, and preferably also Synth Deconstruct. But you could just slap these on any pet, and if you don't have room, then just put Synth Fiber and it should do. So, back to his build, you want to have a bunch of range because you need it for Resonator, you need it for Petrify, and you need it for the radius of Landslide. Now, if you can see, my radius is 4.7 meters, but it's not just 4.7 meters because of the way Landslide works. Now, I'm not going to get too into depth about all of his abilities and what they do, but just know that Landslide has a separate combo mechanic to your melee weapon, and it uses both its innate combo that stacks up to ×4 and the melee combo from your melee weapon to determine the damage from landslide. And as you can see, there's no elements to the damage, only impact. And I'm going to get to that in a sec. This build requires a stat stick, which I'm going to show you guys in a second. And then I'm going to get into some actual gameplay showing you what this does. So it's very simple, actually. All you're going to do is you're going to start off by casting Resonator to make all enemies passive and not attack, and also congregate at a certain point. You're then going to start casting Petrify, and either destroying them with your melee weapons to start racking up your combo, or if you have enough energy, just punch them with Landslide, and if you have enough damage, you just break all of the petrified enemies, and you get even more combo that way, and you rack up the damage even faster. Your goal is to reach the magic 1400 rubble mark. Once that happens, the max is 1500, by the way, so you're going to slowly lose rubble over time, and you're going to want to keep attacking enemies to maintain it at above 1400, which isn't really hard if you just keep spamming your Landslide, which costs 0 energy, has a pretty quick casting time, and you could just chain combo this ability forever as long as you see any enemies anywhere around you, and you also dash to them. So it's a very easy and fun ability to use, as I'm going to show you soon. Duration is important for the time it takes. For the time they remain petrified when they stand in the Path of Statues trail that it leaves. This is, again, what enables you to petrify enemies without casting Petrify at all. In the beginning, you're going to have to cast Petrify to get some rubble. Once you have rubble, you're going to petrify enemies with Path of Statues by just landsliding into everything. So again, you're just going to be casting this ability, and from time to time, you're going to have to refresh your Resonator. And of course, if you want to drop your Rumblers, you're free to do that, but you don't even have to bother with the Rumblers at all. And even if you're safe, you don't even have to bother with the Resonator either. You could just keep hitting Landslide once you racked up your damage. Now, the build requires you to be kind of low damage at first and slowly scale up the damage, because you have a few things that you have to scale up. You have to scale up the damage from Molt Augmented to eventually give you 199 ability strength instead of the meager 139 that this build starts with. You're also going to want to build up your combo counter to times 12. And yeah, and you're also going to want to rack up the combo from Landslide by just spamming this ability. And as you can see where it says combo window 1.55 seconds, that is also determined by duration, which is also pretty important, because you want to be able to have a little bit of leeway between different groups of enemies that you cast your Landslide at, and for you to not lose the ×4 combo that easily. Now, before I move on to actual gameplay, the second build is very similar. It just replaces Resonator with Blood Altar. And what this allows you to do is add Hunter Adrenaline to gain some energy instead. And I've opted for lower range here, since you don't really need as much range if you're not having the Disco Ball to draw your enemies around. So you can kind of afford to go for a Hunter Adrenaline and Vitality and Equilibrium sort of solution to gaining back your energy. Again, for Equilibrium, you need to have the mods that I described earlier on your pet. And with Vitality and Hunter Adrenaline, as enemies hit me, I lose health. As I lose health, it triggers the critical damage buff from Arcane Avenger, which does apply to Landslide attacks, and actually boosts its critical damage by quite a lot. It's more than 45%, because it's 45% of the melee weapon, I believe. And it procs on the melee weapon and on the instead of the ability, and there's a kind of weird multiplier going on there. And yeah, basically this one is going to restore your health with Blood Altar. your health is going to get sacrificed and turned into energy, which you then use to cast your abilities. And instead of keeping yourself alive by enemies not attacking you, like in the case of Resonator, here you're counting on the Blood Altar to actually restore your health over time. Yep, and those are the two ideas behind the builds. And what Blood Altar does let you do that Resonator doesn't, especially, is when you Blood Altar an enemy, it's going to stay there, just like you can see in the tiny video that it shows, and it's immune. But you can rack combo counter on it. So you just grab an enemy and you turn it into a Blood Altar, and then you use it to get to maximum combo as fast as possible, so that you don't have to really... So that basically your Landslide is going to do a lot of damage and build up the damage faster than in the previous build. But of course, once you already built up the damage, then it's kind of meaningless. Now, when it comes to the statstick that I'm using, because this build does require statstick, I opted for this particular build because Blood Rush counts. A lot of other mods don't count. You don't want a lot of critical chance. You don't want a lot of status chance. But I still put Weeping Wounds because I really didn't have anything better to put in this slot. It stacks. It does work and stack with combo counter. And since I'm gonna be constantly on max combo, because the Inodem is just, as I said in a previous video of mine, the best stat stick weapon in the game, it allows you to have 12 times combo practically forever. And you can use your abilities, and it's not going to waste that combo. And abilities that use combo, or exalted weapons that use combo, are going to extremely benefit from using Inodem, considering that it's like an old Zorus pre-nerf. As long as you slide once every so-and-so seconds. But the way Atlas works is you can either slide every 12.5 seconds, or hit an enemy. So when there's enemies present on screen, because of this, gain 5 combo for every 10 meter of continuous slide. This is the most important perk to take on it. All the rest is basically up to you. But what it allows me to do is slide to get 5 combo. Now 5 isn't a lot, but it's just enough to maintain your combo even when there's no enemies for you to attack. So with this approach, when you have enemies around you, you just landslide into them with your 1. You just keep spamming your 1 and you kill everything around you. And when you run out of enemies, let's say in a defense mission, or if everybody around you is killing the enemies and you have no enemies to kill and you don't want your combo duration to run out, you just slide every once in a while, and your combo duration is not only going to stay the same, but it's going to go up a little bit and up a little bit and up a little bit. Now, you don't have to focus on it, because again, as long as you just remember to slide every once in a while, you're not going to lose your combo, and it can stay in max combo forever. Now, what does work on Landslide is almost everything, but Healing Return, for example, won't work, and Condition Overload, most importantly, doesn't work. So keep that in mind. Condition Overload doesn't work, and it's actually recommended to put impact damage on there too, which you wouldn't normally put in normal stat sticks because impact is kind of garbage, but considering that Landslide does only impact damage by itself, then this is going to boost the damage quite a lot. And Molten Impact and Fever Strike make gas, which gas is really useful for the AoE slamming build that we're doing, and Landslide does benefit from gas. There's only a few elements that it can really benefit from: Toxin, Heat, Gas, and some others. So I decided to go for gas, since if an enemy dies, which they're often going to die from one hit, it's going to leave behind a gas cloud, which is going to be based on the damage of Landslide and all of these mods, which is a good thing, because then enemies that step into that area afterwards also might die from the gas damage over time. Yeah, so this is the statstick, and now to show you how the build actually works in practice, I'm going to head into a solo version of Steel Path Moth. Okay, so to showcase the build itself, I'm going to go to Steel Path Moth, where I usually like to showcase these things. Now, I'm gonna start off by locking my melee weapon, so that I don't swap to anything else by mistake. And now I'm gonna show you before I start what I mean by maintaining your combo forever, because it is critical for this build that you do so. So, as you can see, by just sliding continuously for 10 meters, that's the condition of the Inodem, you rack up combo. I don't even need to have enemies on screen to do it, so regardless of whether or not there's enemies on screen, as long as I slide or hit an enemy once every 12.5 seconds, I'm good. But since you usually won't have the privilege of just racking up your combo to max before the enemies show up, I'll just start the mission right away. Now, I send the resonator to stand right here, and now they're gonna group up. Now, at first you want to kill them with your melee weapon, because casting your one costs energy that you're not necessarily going to have it at first. So you want to save that little bit of energy that you do have for actually turning them into petrified enemies. And yep. Yeah, keep in mind, control your resonator. Now, as you can see, I'm starting to get, what is it called? Scrap or whatever, the rubble that he picks up. And once it reaches 1400, then it's time to kind of go crazy. There we go. Yep. Now, I can just spam the one as much as I want. It's not going to cost me anything. And it's going to leave trails behind that basically petrify the enemies for free. And if you're noticing, it's one-shotting stuff in Steel Path. And now that I'm at max combo, all I have to do, keep in mind when there's no enemies, is slide every once in a while. And there's no need for me to worry about energy, because slide costs nothing, so I'm just going to gain energy over time, and I'm going to petrify enemies. It's pretty insane. I love this. And one more thing is, while you're dashing, another thing is happening, and that is that you're becoming immune. So with proper shield gating, you can also just keep taking no damage as you just pound into all the enemies around you. But of course, you can't always guarantee that there's going to be enemies around you, and that's what Resonator is for. So let's just drop him in the middle of the room, let the enemies come to me. Turn them into petrified enemies, and then just smash them. Yep, and that's what you do. And I hope the Acolyte shows up soon, because honestly, this wrecks Acolytes just as easily. I guess I'll stay until I get an Acolyte. Now, as you can see, while we're waiting for an Acolyte to spawn, my combo isn't going down as long as I'm using Landslide, which is actually pretty great, because without that, then this build might not have been as effective, because then you would literally have to keep sliding all the time. But again, just remember to slide when you don't have enemies around you. When you do, you don't have to. You can just keep pounding into them. And as you can see, we're already dealing millions of damage. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention about the... oh yeah, now we're getting an Acolyte. About the other build, the one with Blood Altar. As long as you keep pounding into Blood Altar, which is immune, as I'm doing right now with this Heavy Gunner... Oh, wait. Oh, he silenced me. What a dick. Yeah, well, if that happens, you might want to have better reflexes than mine. And actually pay attention to when he kind of silences you so that you can use your melee weapon instead. Yeah, so he just kicked my ass. But in any case, trust me, you can take down the Acolyte in a few punches directly to the face. And if you keep hammering on him with your 1... then it also doesn't cost energy, and also you can stay immune the whole time, of course, unless he silences you. Yeah, so that was the build, and I hope you have a nice day, guys.